another hearing, so I missed testimony. I have gone through it, and I do have some questions. And I direct my first one to Andy Stahl, and I'd ask him, since they've had a long-standing relationship and understanding of each other, although some differences, I'd like Mr. Stahl to comment on Mr. O'Toole's testimony about fair market value for all forms of recreation on public lands, and just give me your perspective on that. Mr. O'Toole always brings interesting ideas.
He does, he does. If we think of public lands, much like public libraries, we don't even ask the question, what is the fair market value of checking out a book for a kid to read? When we charge people to read books, we call them bookstores. Well, our public lands are not bookstores. They're more like libraries. They're the place that we all share in common. We've decided as a society that we are better off when these resources are held in common and shared among all of us, as well as the costs. So that's my answer. Mm-hmm. This isn't about a market.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Weldon and Ms. Hayes, to the particularly directed to the Forest Service, as I understand your apportionment of the fees, for instance, I live over the Willamette Valley, I live in Springfield, the Willamette headquarters are in Springfield. I often go to their headquarters to buy my recreation pass. We have a large population base in Eugene, Springfield, so I would assume a large number of other people who recreate on Forest Service lands go there too. Yet I mostly recreate on the other side of the mountains. That would be the Deschutes and other forests. If 80% of the funds are going to go to where the passes are purchased, and I assume that's even more so in Portland for the Mount Hood, or in Seattle for whatever is the most contiguous forest there, how do those, couldn't we have a system where when you buy a pass, if you buy it online or you buy it at the forest, perhaps you had sort of like a United Way kind of questionnaire, where would you like to see this money spent? Because I don't necessarily want 80% spent on the Willamette. Yes, they have needs, but then again, I'm recreating more in the Deschutes and other East Side forests.
Thank you, Congressman DeFazio. It's nice to see you. And that's, I think, a concern that has been with the program for many years. How, if I buy my pass, especially with the Northwest Forest Pass in the Pacific Northwest, can I ensure that those investments and those improvements are occurring with the places where I actually recreate? And I think that's an area that is something that we need to take a deeper look at as we look at the issues and concerns for reauthorization, but also in the context of how much further do we want to have impact on the administrative costs that come with the program.
Well,
so we
I
just
think
need
it
to
could
look
be
at that
done.
balance.
I think it can be done pretty simply with some, basically it's
Sort of
voter
an online
preference,
checkoff.
or it's or a United Way kind of. I wanted, 100
Right.
people said they wanted to go to the shoots out of, X. But
And then-
anyway, I'd really like to look at that because I think
Okay.
it does create inequities. The second thing would be special recreation permits, and I find incredible inconsistency between the two agencies. Generally, the Forest Service I have found to be reasonable, and recently I found the BLM to be extraordinarily unreasonable because they don't discriminate between for-profit activities, not-for-profit activities. They don't attribute the costs due to actually the impact on the resource or the amount of personnel. It's just some sort of random, arbitrary, huge cost. The example would be Cycle Oregon. I happened to be on this ride with Cycle Oregon. They did 400 miles of paved roads for $1,000, paying the state, the Forest Service, and the Park Service. They rode on 98 miles of 1950s era chip-sealed logging road on BLM lands with no personnel present, law enforcement or otherwise, not even interpretive personnel at the kind of the nice points on the ride where you had signs, and yet you wanted $25,000. And so I had to personally intervene with the secretary. The secretary assured me they would review the process on how they make these charges. Where are we at in that review?
My understanding is that BLM has been working with Cycle Oregon there's a memorandum of understanding with
Well,
them.
no, I don't want to get into all that because there's some very sordid history there too.
Yes, sir.
I want to know what you're doing generally to become more like the Forest Service and charge fees that are more assessed on the impact and/or the costs to the agency for using these public resources rather than some arbitrary charge that's levied.
So BLM has evaluated their commercial use fee, and
This
they...
is not commercial, ma'am. It's nonprofit with all of the excess proceeds going to impoverished rural communities along the route.
It is BLM's view that it falls into the category of fees they call commercial use fees.
Okay,
Since-
so we've made no progress then. I see my time is over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have to work further on this. Perhaps we'll have to legislate.
Thank you. Allow me to ask a few questions, if I could. And if there may be time for other questions if other members want them as well. Let me start with Ms. Hayes and Ms. Weldon. Can you tell me what percentage of the annual budgets for your agencies that collect